Hi, good evening, and welcome to tonight's program. We are currently listening to Mrs. Chanie Wolf on the Power of Modesty, Part 3. If you've missed the previous two lectures and you'd like to catch up, you can catch up at mikvah.org/media. I encourage you to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, mikvah.org, on Instagram, @mymikvah, and we have a broadcast. You can message me at 732-534-2948 if you would like to join the broadcast. We are going to address all questions tonight at the end of the program. So go ahead and message them to me privately in the chat box, and we will address them at the end. Coming up next week, we're going to have a retrospective on the Mitzvah of Taras HaMishpacha, the Rebbe's call to action, beginning in Tafshin Lamed Hey. So if you'd like to tune into that, that's mikvah.org/live next week at 8:30 p.m. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to call on Mrs. Chanie Wolf, Part 3. Oh, one more thing is that in the top of the chat box, but I'll repost it again for those who joined in now, is a handout for tonight's program. It will also be posted under the recording once it's transferred to mikvah.org media. If you'd like to look at it now, it is in the chat box. There'll be a link for the download. So thank you, Mrs. Chanie Wolf, for joining us again, and looking forward to hearing Part 3.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Got on me 1 second. No.
Am I good? Do you hear me? Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, just pick up the speaker. I apologize. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Part 3 of the Power of Modesty, our series on Tznius. I want to just remind everyone, whoever was on Part 1 or 2, and if you were not, that just where we're holding and where we're at. So we're talking about the 5 parts of Tznius, that Tznius is a composite of 5 concepts. And we're going to keep referring to them. Today, we're going to focus on 3, 4, and 5. We are in the middle of number 3. So we had, here we go. Sorry. Okay. We discussed Tznius as Yerushalayim, 2, Das Moshe, and Das Yehudis, and we're right now in the middle of Chukos Hagoy. In Meretz Hashem, we will also talk about La Yilbash briefly, as well as the idea of Michshel, and we'll focus on those more. So I want to we're in the middle of a topic, so I want to just do a little bit of introduction based on what we discussed last time. We introduced that the idea of number 3 of Chukos Hagoy is more than, of course, the halachas and the technicalities of what we must do or must not do. We introduced the concept of Yiddish pride, Go'in Yaakov, as you see here, the concept of Havdalah, the Lag BaOmer parade, the importance of reinforcing the pride in who we are, that Hamav ben Kodesh l'chol, that Hashem has separated us, just like from Kodesh to Chol, ben Ur l'choshech, so too ben Yisrael la'amim, and being able to remind ourselves at all times of this difference, that we are an Am Skula, that we are an Am Kodesh. And so what we're going to look at this time in Meretz Hashem is specifically halachically in our address how we, just like when we talked about Tznius as Yerushalayim, that dressing in a way that is refined, dignified, helps us access that feeling of Yerushalayim, of respect for Hashem. So too here, we're trying to access that feeling of Go'in Yaakov, of Yiddish pride. This is who we are. And the mitzvah of Chukos Hagoy really helps us do that. So we're going to start today with the halachas in that category. I'm going to go straight to here. You see here the Shulchan Aruch. So halachically, I just want to be clear, the halachas of Chukos Hagoy are very specific in that there are only certain things that are considered to be problematic because they're Chukos Hagoy. And then, of course, like everything in Yiddishkeit, and we've discussed the concept of a Shabbos Seudah, right? That the goal, of course, is that our Seudah on Shabbos should be an experience of connection to Hashem. It should be a time of Kedusha. And Torah gives us basic guidelines, at least this, at least that, right? And then you get the idea of what it should look like. So there's the halacha, and there's, of course, beyond the halacha, the spirit of the mitzvah. So on a basic level, halachically, you see in the Shulchan Aruch, 3 categories that are highlighted here of what is considered chukas hagoy. What kind of dress and what kind of look would severely undermine a sense of Goin Yaakov, a sense of Yiddish identity, and therefore are even halachically problematic. The first is, you can see here where it's bolded and then highlighted, the mitzvahs, we should not be like the Ovdei Kachavim B'Lemizdan Lehen. We shouldn't be similar to them, not in our dress, not in our hairstyle, etc. Based on the psukim we discussed last time, Le'seilchu b'chukas hagoy, b'chukas seim, le'seilechu, etc. Number 1, highlighted here, Malbush hamiyuchad lahem l'shum geyos. A kind of dress that the goyim wear, l'shum geyos, geyos miloshin gaiva, it's referred to there a little bit later as well, divrei shachatz v'gaiva hein. The concept of gaiva, and one example brought here is that at the time, there was, the goyim would wear red, highlight here, red, ritzuas adumas, they would wear red shoelaces. It was common that the goyim wore red shoelaces, and the Yidden would wear black shoelaces. And the halacha explains why. It's not like it happened to be that the goyim happened to wear red shoelaces. Black, and I remember this question came up last time, is there anything about black? And just to be clear, we are not saying a woman must wear only black. That's not the point. But the concept here is that seva shocher meire al anova v'shiflos v'tznius, that the color black indicates and gives a certain sense of anova, humility, right? Going back to the concept of hatsnei leches and bittul, shiflos, tznius, it's a subdued color. It's a sense of respect, right? You dress in a respectful way when you're wearing a dark color. It's not this like loud, I'm making noise, as opposed to why do the goyim wear red shoelaces, or why is red considered a Geisha color? Because the first category halachically of chukas hagoy is dressing as the goyim do in a way that makes a statement. Okay, so that's number 1. What does it mean to dress in a Geisha way? So goyim use dress, halacha explains, which basically means the world, right? The world sees dress as an opportunity to make a statement about myself. And the truth is, it's not really just dress. It's, it could be my car, right? It could be, I could be sporting some fancy red convertible or whatever, right? Like, it's not just a utilitarian thing. It's not just, oh, I have to get somewhere. It's a statement. Everyone should know something about me. And that idea of making a statement about myself and how important I am and how prestigious I am and how wealthy I am and how whatever the case might be that I want to brag about, and I'm going to flaunt my wealth and I'm going to flaunt my beauty and I'm going to flaunt whatever I have and everyone should be impressed, that's considered the ultimate of Goyishkeit. Because going back to number 1, the etzem of Yiddishkeit is bittul, hachna'ah, right? Lo nivresi elo l'shamesh eskaini, we're here to serve Hashem. It's not about me, right? V'anochi afer ve'efer, of course, in the other pocket goes, right, goes b'shvili nivra olam, right? But the b'shvili nivra olam, the world was created for me, was not the world was created because I'm so awesome. The world was created for me to have pleasure, but rather the world was created for the avodah, for the mitzvahs that I am going to do in it and with it in my part of the world. It's all based on Hashem, my self-esteem, my confidence. It's all based on my neshama and what Hashem wants and needs from me, as opposed to my talents, my importance, my beauty. So category 1 is dressing in a way that makes a loud statement about myself. What's considered ostentatious clothing, something that's over the top. Now, in the olden days, that would be wearing the kind of clothing that is malbush sarim, that's brought in halacha, the things that the high-class society would wear. It's not clear exactly what categories that would fit into today, but some suggestions to think about that might be in that range, other than the obvious, which is red. Loud colors are brought in that category, though it comes into number 2 as well. Anything loud, anything that's extremely noticeable in the sense that it just makes a very strong statement, and perhaps something that is much fancier than normal in my surroundings. And every community that's different, but kind of wearing the kinds of things that make it very obvious that I'm, a cut above, I'm wealthier, I'm fancier, just standing out in this like showy way. And of course, that's not just clothing, it's anything else. Oops. Sorry. anything else that we're using to flaunt, to make a statement. Another suggestion, perhaps, wearing brand name things in a way that like I'm showing off that I have the brand. Of course, there's nothing wrong with good quality clothing, right? But if everyone has to know that, like, attention, my bag is from such and such, and you can tell that I'm specifically wearing that kind of bag, so you should know what a fancy bag I have, things like that in that category. If I'm looking to make a statement about myself through my clothing, is the first category of chukas hagoy. That brings us to number 2, which is actually similar, and some place can consider it an extension of the same thing, but we're going to separate them. 2, you have here, if you look at, one second, where is it here? The second thing that's highlighted, or if it's a beged pritzos, a type of clothing, a style that is designed specifically to provoke, to call inappropriate attention. We're not talking about pretty clothing, we're talking about specific styles, and I'm sure all of us can think of those kinds of styles. There are people who make a business out of this. They spend all their time in Paris or wherever it is, coming up with new styles. Of course, the main objective is simply money, right? If I'm gonna like the clothing that I wore 10 years ago, then I'm not necessarily, unless I've gained weight or whatever, I'm not gonna go buy a whole new wardrobe. So someone's got to convince me that my clothing is out of fashion and out of date, and therefore the stores are going to sell more. So of course the main objective here is money. But in thinking about new fashion, sometimes the guy just come up with, okay, so we need a new color. So this year it's purple, next year it's black and white, and afterwards it's sequins. Sort of who cares, at least halachically. But at times they come up with styles that in and of themselves are pritzostic, that you can tell someone's thinking about something pretty inappropriate and looking to provoke inappropriate attention, whether it's the long slits as they came out. And a question came up about slits, by the way. Yes, it is true that in the past, Sneistic women wore like house coats and things that had these like button down to the front with a little slit, and it was nothing. But once it became a style, a beged pritzos that the Goyim started to create, skirts with slits, all the way up to wherever, that turned it into a beged pritzos. And then in addition to any other das Yehudis issues, etc., you have the concept of a beged pritzos. It could be a certain kind of top. It calls attention to a certain part of the body. It's hard to define. We can all use our common sense. A style that is designed to call inappropriate attention. And then that brings us to number 3. Kol davar shenahagu leminhagu l'chayk. Anything that the goyim wear as sort of a chayk. A chayk is something that doesn't make any sense, right? There's no logic to it. In other words, if you look at the styles that come out, much of the time, they're pretty. It's just, of course, they have to make money, so they change. So here it's this, here it's that. But like, yes, it is pretty when it's flowers are pretty and sequins are pretty and whatever is pretty. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that they made up a new style. But then there are styles that you just don't get, right? They don't make sense. There's no logic to them. It's not like you can explain they were pretty. If imagining ourselves having worn it like a few years before that, it's like unthinkable. If we think about ourselves in 5 years, looking at a picture of ourselves wearing that, we will probably be mortified, right? So, you might say certain kinds of footwear that might have been considered slippers at home and suddenly they become normal, like we walk around in Crocs or whatever, just throwing out a suggestion, but there are times that the Goyim come up with a style that it's not about pretty, it's not flattering, no one can argue that it's attractive in any normal way. It's a shtick, it's just purely a shtick. And it's a fad, it comes in, it goes out, and the only reason that anyone could explain, the only reason I might be wearing it is because it's in, right? I can't say, oh, I like it, it looks good on me. Like, no, it doesn't. I might like it because I want to feel in, but the only thing it has is a fad, is that it's popular. So it's clearly, I'm only doing it because of the Goyim. So to summarize, chukas hagoy halachically includes any clothing that the Goyim use, the kind of clothing the Goyim would wear to make a statement about their status, right? Something is too showy, very ostentatious. 2, a style that is designed to call inappropriate attention. And 3, a fad that cannot be explained that it's pretty. I'm clearly doing it only because of the Goyim. Now, back to what we had discussed last time, beyond the halacha about this, the idea of clothing as Yiddish pride is a really central idea to think about how clothing influences us. There's a fascinating story about the Chassid Reb Peretz Chaim. Why isn't this working? Yeah. Okay, so sorry, those are our three categories. Right? So Reb Peretz Chaim came to the Tzemach Tzedek with a fellow Chassid. And the Tzemach Tzedek asked, who is this? And Reb Peretz was surprised. This was the Chassid who I believe it had already been at the time of the Alter Rebbe, like the Tzemach Tzedek had grown up with him. He knew him. How could it be that he didn't recognize him? And he was dressed in a pretty modern fashion. So Reb Peretz told the Rebbe who this was, and the Tzemach Tzedek registered like this strong look of surprise and said, I can't believe it. Had I known what effect clothing could have on a person, I would have had Mesiras Nefesh for it. Meaning I would require that you didn't have Mesiras Nefesh to hold on to their Yiddish clothing had I known what an effect it could have. So beyond the halacha, there's the understanding that dressing in a Yiddish way, we're told that Yaakov Avinu had to come and take the brachas in a way that wasn't exactly MS because it wasn't coming to him the right way. And what did Rivka do? How do you get Yaakov, who was the ultimate of MS? How do you get Yaakov Avinu to say something that's not 100% the truth, that he is Esav? Reminder to everyone, if you could please mute. How do we do that? So Rivka dressed Yaakov in Esav's clothing. She had Yaakov put on Esav's clothing. Yeah, okay. Wearing the clothing of Esav allowed Yaakov Avinu to turn into the kind of person who could say something that was not emes. And so beyond what is halachically chukas hagai, which is of course the most important factor here, first of all is halacha, but there is a sensitivity to, do I look like a yid? Is my dress the kind of dress that brings out the yid in me? I wanted to share briefly, have your picture of an upshernish. Think about, we make a big celebration about the upshernish. A child, a Yiddish boy becomes 3 years old, make a whole celebration. What is this? Is it a party? Is it a third birthday party, right? We'll put trains out. Like, what is it? This celebration, just like the bar mitzvah is a celebration that a child has come to the age of mitzvahs, the upshernish is a celebration that a Yiddish child is learning what it means to dress like a Yid, to have a Yiddish tzir, to have a Yiddish look. We especially allow the hair to grow until it's long enough that it will be noticeable what you did. And the child is 3 years old, they're old enough to remember. They're like to look back afterwards and remember what happened, to notice what you're doing. And you take that long hair and you cut it, and for the first time, give them a Yiddish tzira, a Yiddish look. Payas. You cut off all the hair and you leave the payas, and they learn what it means to leave the payas, to have a Yiddish tzira, to have a Yiddish look, and the yarmulke, etc. as well. But the primary thing is the payas. So the whole celebration of the upshernish is a very strong statement to us about how central to the chinuch of a Yid is the concept that I look like a Yid stands out in a distinctly beautiful Yiddish tam, and that holding on to that kind of dress really allows us to access the Yid that we are. And to finish that topic, one more little story here, you have the Tzivos Hashem here. So there was a boy, a young Yiddish child who passed the Rebbe at Dollars wearing a t-shirt that had a certain character on it that wasn't, some popular Geisha character, a children's character. And the Rebbe asked him, are you in Tzivos Hashem? So the child, of course he is. Everyone's in Tzivos Hashem. Of course I am. And the Rebbe said, why is a child in Tzivos Hashem wearing a Geisha shirt? What does a t-shirt with a Geisha tzir, a Geisha character have to do with a child in Tzivos Hashem? So I don't want to spend too much time on this because there's a lot more we have to get to. But just that brief thought that there's the halacha of chukas hagai, but there is a reason for the mitzvah. There is something more here that Torah is looking to teach us, that when we dress as Yidden dress, it allows us to hold on to our Go'in Yaakov, our pride in being Yidden, that really affects the rest of our Avodas Hashem. And we don't want to be influenced by the styles, by the, even just the fact that the Goyim said so. Who cares that the Goyim said, right? that it shouldn't affect us that much. This is the beyond halacha. One more important thought on that concept is that the Rebbe talks about the women in Mitzrayim, leishinu es shemam, l'shaynam malbusham. It says that there are three things that the Yidden did not change, and in that schus, they were zeicha to leave Mitzrayim. And it focuses specifically, they didn't change. And the Rebbe asks a very interesting question. We should say in the positive, in the schus of their tznius, the Yidden were redeemed from Mitzrayim. No, we say because they didn't change their dress. And the Rebbe explains it's very specific here. Of course, they dressed tznius. That wasn't a question. But the truth is, at the time, many of the Mitzrayim dressed appropriately as well. They were covered. It wasn't that the dress they didn't take on was they didn't wear not tznius clothing. The Goyim also wore relatively tznius clothing. What the Yidden did not do is adopt the Geisha dress, adopt the styles of Mitzrayim, even if they covered properly. Even if they were officially tzniistic, loishinu, they didn't change. We have our Yiddish tam, we have our Yiddish style. This is how Yidden look. We're not interested in following the trends of the Goyim. So some thoughts to ponder about really, and it's a point that I know for myself, I think about, I struggle with. It's not like it's, who cares what the fashion is, and I could look like I'm from years ago. And it's a hard thing what we see around us, but there's a sensitivity we can all work on about how much do we really care that the Goyim decided it's in fashion. So they decided, right, that this is how a Yiddish woman looks. Why should it matter? Why should my clothing become outdated, old-fashioned, and not pretty because some guy in Paris sat down and decided that it's so? And those are really just the beyond halacha perspectives on chukas hagoy that perhaps would be meaningful to think about. So those are the thoughts for now on category number 3. And I want to move on to the next category. So now we're going to look at number 4. Number 4, one second, why is this working? Okay, that was Leishinu. Okay, we had Tznius, Das Maisha, Das Yehudis, Chukas Hagai, we're up to La Yilbash. I'm just going to say that this is a huge, huge topic, and I might recommend that this should be a topic that could be explored maybe on mitzvah.org or somewhere in the future, Mitzvah Hashem. The topic of who we are as women, it's a huge topic. It really covers a lot more than we can attempt to cover in the context of this course. So I'm going to stick here to that which is specific to the halachas of tznius, a few brief insights, but this is definitely not all there is to it. There's a lot more to this discussion. And that is the concept of klei gever. So let's start with this. As women, we know that we've been given a very, very special role, a unique role, defined by the Rebbe's Chana, Chala, Nidad, Lukas, and Eris, the 3 mitzvahs of a woman. There is a very, very special role that women have. And in the world today, let's be a little bit, acknowledge the reality. This distinction between men and women is not very politically correct, right? We're all the same, there's no difference, etc. So it becomes a little bit hard, even not in the extreme, on the more subtle levels, it becomes difficult to really appreciate what is unique to men, what is unique to women. And a huge element in Torah that has a lot of bearing on tznius, but also is so critical to our understanding of our role in the world, is Torah's perspective on what is a man, what is a woman, why did Hashem create both? Zachar and Nekeva bara oisam. Why did Hashem create men and women? How are they different? What are they meant to be doing? And again, like I said, it's a huge topic, and if we're going to start exploring it, we'll never finish. So with a basic understanding that there is a unique role for each. It's not about one being better than the other. Either way, it's just different. Like the Rebbe explains, there's the brain and the heart. The brain is not better, the heart is not better. You need both, they're just different. And they perform different functions and serve different vital roles in the body. So too, the man and woman serve vital roles in Yiddishkeit, and we will explore some more of that in category number 5. And the point of this discussion, number 4, is that there is a mitzvah in Torah given to us to help ensure that we have a healthy sense of who we are as men or women. And that is the mitzvah of klei gever, the mitzvah to ensure that our dress and behavior is appropriate for the gender that Hashem created us. So the pasuk says like this: Lo yeh klei gever isha v'la yilbash gever simlas isha kitay v'Hashem lakecha kol ele. That a woman should not wear, I apologize, a woman should not wear clay gever, or not just wear, should not have clay gever on her, the kalim, the ornaments, the tools of a man, and a man should not wear simlas isha, the dress of a woman. So I'm going to look first and primarily at the practical halachas of this and how it pertains to dress. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch explains, of course, based on the Shulchan Aruch and all the other poskim, what does this mean? That a man is not allowed to wear even one garment that is unique to women, meaning it's a specific garment that is intended for women. He's not allowed to wear, even though you can tell he's a man, and the same thing for a woman. Kol masha meyuchad le'ish, anything that is specific, a garment that is intended specifically for men, women cannot wear either. As you see here in the halacha, there are other things, grooming, anything that is specific to the way women groom themselves, a man is not allowed to do, for example, plucking white hairs or whatever. It's not just dress, it's any, focusing too much on looks, which I'm not going to discuss men's avodah too much here, but it's interesting to know as mothers that in chinuch of sons, that for a man, for a boy to be, it brings in here, looking too much at the mirror, caring too much about looks, about Yosef and Mitzrayim, that was the beginning of other challenges afterwards. It's part of Layikle Gever, Layilbash Gever Simlas Isha, that a man is not supposed to be like a woman, caring too much about his looks, because we're going to see that Hashem created a woman liyofi for beauty, and therefore that's for women too, and women should. It is completely feminine and appropriate. Fascinating story that the Rebbe came to visit Mechon Chana, the dormitory of Mechon Chana. The Rebbe had a very, very special place for this home named after the Rebbe's mother, and considered the daughters there, the Rebbe's daughters, and the Rebbe came to visit to see that the girls were being treated properly and taken care of properly. And the Rebbe looks around in the dormitory, opens some of the rooms and asks, where are the mirrors? And in one of the versions that I recently saw, one of the Hasidim there started laughing. I think it was Rabbi Hecht. He started chuckling, like, why does it matter where the mirrors are? And the Rebbe, in all seriousness, when he was shown that there were mirrors inside the doors, the Rebbe said, oh, I can, now I can, Shlaf Ruach, now I can sleep peacefully, and explained that it's very important. A woman, a girl needs mirrors, needs to care about the way she looks. That is, that's the way Hashem created her, and it is very much a part of her avodah. So it is dafka appropriate for women to look pretty, and it is not part of the avodah of men. So that's the men's side. And at the same token, you have the opposite. A woman should not detract from her power of femininity, from her beautiful feminine self, by doing the kind of activities or wearing the kinds of things that were intended for men. So one thing brought in halacha, one example, is clay gever. It says kalim, clay gever, not big day, because kalim refers to ornaments. One main example of that would be weapons. Without getting into the technicalities, there might be specific heterim in dangerous situations, but lechatchila, a woman is not supposed to be in the army. A woman is not supposed to be a soldier carrying weapons or doing any of those kinds of more aggressive activities, because the role of protector, which involves fighting, right, the opposite of peace, is the domain of darka shel ish lichbaish, the domain of the men. It is not the domain of the women to have to, sort of be aggressive and assertive in that way. She should be protected, and that detracts from her femininity to be doing those kind of masculine activities. And then I want to focus on specifically one very relevant issue, which came up in a previous class that we just did not in context of clay gever, and that is the question of pants. So I want to spend a few minutes on pants here in that context. There is a debate amongst the poskim if pants are considered halachically clay gever or not. And to be clear, a woman walking around in pants is not sneistic anyway, because as far as Hatzneya Leches Melekecha, Das Moshe, and Das Yehudis, including Chukas Agoy because of Big Day Pritzus, pants are designed to show the separation of the legs. And as we brought previously, it is not, according to halacha, it's not appropriate for the separation of a woman's legs to be noticeable. It's supposed to be completely camouflaged. And therefore, wearing pants in general is not tzniistic, so that's irrelevant. But the question that comes up here is, are pants also problematic mitam because of klei gever? And the difference in halacha would be, if it's also an issue of klei gever, then it would not be permitted even under a long skirt, right? Even if one is covered, it would not be permitted at night, exercise, etc. So the conclusion of the majority of poskim is that pants that are worn with the intention to be seen as pants are not permitted because of klei gever, right? If I'm looking to have the look of pants, I'm going to wear a dress and there will be pants underneath, that would be considered klei gever. If a woman is wearing them strictly for functional purposes, which means she's doing exercise and that allows her to be tzniistic because she can't do exercise in a tzniistic way without something covering her under her skirt, or for cold and comfort at night under tzniistic nightwear. In that case, there is, although there are some that do not permit it, the consensus is that it's permitted in those specific categories. But the point is, that means not in public and not in any way that it's intended to show a look, right? It's not, I'm wearing it for the look, and it's not in public. It's strictly in private for a specific functional purpose, again, under a completely tzniistic dress or skirt. Which brings us back to the question of leggings, which had been discussed, and I know there were some questions about that. And I want to show what the psak of the Basin of Crown Heights is about leggings here. Here we go. Okay. So as we had discussed, there are several issues with leggings. I'm going to read here, when they're worn without socks, leggings expose the lower section of the foot. And likewise, when worn with a pencil skirt, as is often done, the skirt rides up above the knee, a serious breach of tznius. So that was the first aspect, that because of das Maisha or das Yehudis, and one of the key elements of das Yehudis is the understanding that if something can cause a breach of tznius, meaning it is inevitable that something that should be covered will become uncovered, it would be problematic because of that. But what's brought here as well is there is also another issue of they are somewhat similar to pants in that they have a connotation of klei gever, a male garment. Now, I know there is a lot of debate about this because people say they're not pants, they're footless tights. So, sorry, how did that happen? Oops, thank you. To explain about the difference between, why leggings would be considered pants, just on a basic level, right? If someone's gonna go shopping for a 2-year-old girl and want to get her leggings, they're gonna find them in the section with pants and skirts. They're not in the accessory section. They are worn in the world. People will wear a top and leggings. They're not gonna wear a top and tights. They're made to be, thick enough or whatever to count as pants, and therefore considered in the non-Jewish world acceptable enough, in their opinion, to wear just alone. So because of that, they have a connotation, can be considered basically tight pants. And because of that, if it's a klei gever issue, even if it's worn under a skirt, and even if it wouldn't, as brought here, which often is, even if it wouldn't be an issue of causing the knee to be uncovered or the part where the socks are to be uncovered and everything else, there is also the problem of klei gever, which if one is wearing it for the sake of the look, there's that problem as well. And again, as noted here, if it's specifically worn only where people cannot notice, no one can tell that it's leggings, it's worn in a totally covered, tzniistic way and strictly for functional purposes, that's a different story. So I hope that's clear on that category. And again, just to wrap up number 4, and then we're going to move on primarily to category number 5, is we really need to recognize that Torah is not looking to make things more difficult. Right? The concept of klei gever and simlas isha Torah wants women to be women, men to be men. Sorry, I had to get out of this. And when we can, when we can remember that Hashem created us as women, women are intended to be beautiful and feminine. We don't want to look like the men. We're not looking to have a masculine type of look or engage in masculine behaviors or be screaming on the street. And I'm not getting into the whole larger topic of careers and everything else that the Rebbe connects to this. But thinking about the pants and the leggings and everything else, Hashem wants us to really stay in touch with that beautiful feminine self that he created us with. And thinking about that, helps us realize it's not another isser, it's not another problem. It's really a safeguard Torah gives us to help bring out the beauty that he created us with. We're going to have all questions. So Mir Hashem, if you have questions on any of these topics, we're going to take all questions at the end when we finish category number 5 in Mir Hashem. So having briefly looked at Chukas Hagoy and Klei Gever, I want to move on now to the next category. And I want to review where we're at before I introduce this category to help us understand, really help us understand the context here. So far, we've discussed 4 issues, and I want to review them briefly in case, especially if you haven't been at number 1 and 2, and even if you have, that we can recognize what we have so far. We've discussed at length how tznius is a composite of 4 central elements in the life of a Yiddish woman. So we have number 1, hatznei leches, which is the lifestyle of yiras shamayim, respect for Hashem's presence. 2, we had das Yehudis and das Moshe and das Yehudis, which means this sensitivity of hatznei leches is upheld by the boundaries that Torah sets out for us in Das Moshe and Das Yehudis to ensure that we can cultivate and retain and expand on this sensitivity of Hatznei Alecha. So there are the halachas involved. 3, expressing and strengthening our Goyin Yaakov, our pride in being an Am Kadosh, by not following Chukas Hagoy, the ways of the Goyim, the dress of the Goyim. And 4, La Yilbash, appreciating our uniqueness as women and celebrating femininity. Now, all the above would suffice, okay, to help us understand where the halachas of tznius come from. And really, if we think about those 4, I think we would appreciate how important it is in our avodas Hashem, why we talk about tznius as, such a big deal and why it's emphasized so much. I think in the context of those 4, we can really understand why it's so important. Tznius is between me and Hashem. It's about my yiras shamayim. It's about my Yiddish pride, my sensitivity to Kedusha. It's both an expression of my deepest values, and when we had that story about the Cantonists and the uniforms and Feigl, it's a means of strengthening them. It works from inside and from outside. It expresses what's inside, the deepest values of yiras shamayim, Goyin Yaakov, etc., and it also helps reinforce them because the heart, as we learned, follows the actions. Now, unfortunately, it's common for women and girls to feel, and I say this a lot, and it's normal, that, tznius is a matter of social acceptance. There's this sense that it's just about what people say and what people are going to think. It's about how others are going to judge me. Am I tznius enough? How will they look at me? Will they look me up and down? Will someone think it reflects on my yiras shamayim? Will they not eat in my house? And it feels unfair. Don't they know how hard I'm trying? I remember when a girl shared, people might not think I'm the kind of girl who cares too much about tznius and just whatever. And they have no idea that the other day I was in the store and I bought a top and I left the store and then I went back in and returned it because I realized that it wasn't tzniustic enough. Like, I'm trying and no one knows. And you're right. No one knows. It's true. So to everyone out there, whoever's listening, whoever relates to those feelings of judgment and, all that social thing about tznius, I first want to say this. Judgment hurts. Judgment is painful. I'm sure we've all felt judged by others at some point in our lives and probably continue to in many ways. And it could be about anything. We might feel judged about things related to, matters about our mitzvahs, or it could be anything else. People judge our parenting style. People judge our spending habits, our health habits, anything else. And it hurts. It always hurts to feel judged, and it's always wrong. And unfortunately, until Mashiach comes, part of Golus is that it's difficult for people to overcome that, and we need to try. We all, definitely, there's no question, we all need to try better to keep judgment out of anything, out of chinuch for sure, certainly out of tznius, and it would make things a lot easier. I think that's for sure. And it's important to acknowledge that sometimes it's also our own perception. Maybe people aren't judging us. Maybe we're judging ourselves, and we might feel insecure and think people are judging us, and it doesn't matter, whatever it is, whether it's true, whether it's not true. It's difficult and it's challenging, and there's no question it makes tznius even more challenging. Now, having said that, let's remember that everything we've learned until this point, the 4 key elements of tznius, teach us that tznius is not about anyone else. That's perhaps, hopefully, the biggest lesson out of all those 4 categories. It's not what anyone will think of us. It's not about my mother. It's not about my teacher. It's not about my principal. It's not about the Rebbitzin, the community, whoever the community is. It's not about the Rabbanim. It's about my relationship with Hashem. It's about what Hashem wants of me. And only He knows. Only Hashem knows what's really going on inside, how hard I'm trying. Only Hashem knows, right? If I'm giving myself excuses and just saying like, oh, it's my struggle, or if I'm sincerely making an effort and I am struggling and I'm really trying to grow in this important area, Hashem knows. And I don't mean to minimize chas v'shalom, the painful feelings that many of us carry, and there's baggage and there are memories of someone saying this and someone saying that, and it makes it challenging. And I acknowledge that. And perhaps if we could think about these concepts of what tznius really means for me, between me and the Eibishter, it can just help us reframe the conversation. And we can ask, when we look in the mirror, just ask ourselves, what does Hashem think? When we shop in a store, what does Hashem think of this item of clothing? When we share something, when we speak, when we share something online, is this appropriate for me as a daughter of Hashem? Just take everyone out of the picture if we can try, and make it about between me and Hashem. What's the right thing? How can I move forward? How can I grow from where I am a little bit more? So really, the truth is that the series should end here, because that would be enough. But the truth is that when it comes to tznius, there is an additional 5th important element involved in the halachas of tznius. And it's important that we address that as well. And this 5th element we call michshel. It is the aspect of responsibility toward others. To be clear, it's not like there's anything practical in the halachas of tznius, in the halachas of appropriate dress and behavior that's actually added by this 5th category, this aspect. The halachas of das Maisha, das Yehudis, etc. apply even in private. So it's not like it's because of anyone else. But when we recognize that there is a bigger picture, it can just help motivate us in this vital mitzvah to realize that there is an extra element of responsibility involved. So I want to preface first with general context about how the Torah sees the question of social responsibility. Here in America, we're used to a Bill of Rights. I remember sometimes I take if I take a cab, I've noticed that they have these livery passenger Bill of Rights, I think it's called, something like that. Like you have a livery passenger Bill of Rights. There's a special Bill of Rights for someone taking a car, right? I have a right to, to a clean car and to not have noise and to be driven safely, et cetera, right? We're used to rights. I have a right to freedom. I have a right to pursue happiness. I have a right to vote. And perhaps it is the best method the world has come up with so far in the absence of Melech HaMashiach, who we are waiting for, to help ensure that that people are treated properly. It's not perfect. I guess, it's the least of the evils. And interestingly enough, Torah does not discuss rights at all. It discusses responsibilities. Every human being has, according to Torah, 7 major responsibilities in this world, which are the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Instead of a right to life, they have a responsibility to protect life. Instead of a right to a fair trial, they have an obligation to pursue justice. And Yidden have 613 responsibilities, plus another 7, D'Rabbanan. And the goal, the perspective of Torah in this is that if every person is going to ask, what are my responsibilities in this world? What are my responsibilities to Hashem? Then altogether we create a world where everyone experiences the goodness that Hashem wants them to have, and the world becomes good and perfect and a world of Gula for everyone, because we're all concerned with the responsibilities we have as opposed to with our rights, which we really have no control over what anyone is going to do for us. And it's a paradigm shift that really is very, very important in general. It's a basic Torah concept that's critical in life, in every relationship. Perhaps most importantly, you see it in marriage. Right? I can choose to ask, what are my rights in this marriage? And I probably do have rights technically, because the other's responsibilities could be my rights, but that's, that would be taking the opposite perspective, right? I could ask, are my needs being met? Am I getting what I want? Am I happy? Or we can take the higher road, and instead of asking, are my rights being respected? Are my needs being met? We can say, how do I take responsibility for my marriage? What are my responsibilities? What does Hashem want from me in this situation? Right? My husband is not it's not about, he's there to fulfill my needs, right? My role is to say, what are my responsibilities? What does he need from me? What does my spouse need? And when a husband takes that approach, we're able to bring shalom bayis into the home. And obviously, just disclaimer, of course, I'm talking about normal, healthy relationships, not chas v'shalom abusive, right? That's important. So as challenging as it is to adopt this mindset, because it's so much easier to focus on what I need and what I deserve and what I'm supposed to get as opposed to what I'm supposed to give to others. But we can easily understand that in mitzvahs bin adam l'chaverei, that kind of makes sense, right? We have a responsibility to others, and we do need to think about them. They're affected by our choices. As we know, Yom Kippur is not mechaper unless, right? That's why we ask forgiveness before Yom Kippur. It's not just between us and Hashem. The mitzvahs bin adam l'chaverei, they're between us and Hashem, but other people are affected by them. We have to ask their mechila, right? We realize there is an impact we have on others. We might feel like, I'm angry, I have the right to vent my anger. I don't want to feel resentment brewing inside. I just have the right to express my anger. But Torah says, no, not really. It's not about your right to express your anger. You have a responsibility to be respectful to everyone else. And if the fact that you're feeling angry, you need to deal with that, but that does not allow you to just vent it at someone else. You have a responsibility to be respectful and careful about how you speak. So, we can get that in ben adam l'chaverei, that no, I can't just do whatever I want because people are being impacted. And it's harder to realize that the same thing is true really in ben adam l'makom as well. Because yes, I learned Torah, keep Shabbos, kashrus, taras mishpacha for Hashem. That's the reason, right? And that's what we've discussed until now. The only reason we're doing any of this is because Hashem said so. So when it comes to tznius, I am tzniistic because Hashem says so, right? Because Hashem wants it, because this is what Torah says. And the exact details, the exact boundaries are set by Hashem, and that's the reason they are that way, and that's the reason I keep them. But it's important to recognize that just like mitzvahs bin adam l'chaverei, even this mitzvah affects other people. Every mitzvah, really, in truth. Even bin adam l'makom affects other yidden, because all of Klal Yisrael is considered kaima achas shlema, one body. We're one body. So, right, as Torah teaches us, Kol Yisrael arevim zeh lezeh, we're responsible for each other. And if my feet bump into something and slip, my hand will likely get hurt, right? It's not just about my feet. If I put the wrong food in my mouth, then my stomach is probably going to bear the brunt of that and not take that very well, right? So there's an interconnectedness amongst Yidden where whatever any one Yid does is affecting every other Yid. And in fact, as Chassidim, because a Chassid is lifnim mishur sadin, the Rebbe teaches us to take this responsibility to a completely new level, and not be concerned about what I have to do, responsibilities for other Yidden, but to go beyond that and really sincerely care about the avodas Hashem of other Yidden beyond my obligations. And that's really the mark of Lubavitcher Chassid, that, the Rebbe teaches us to have Mesiras Nefesh, to move to the other end of the world, take on incredible challenges, what many shluchim go through, living without the infrastructure of a Yiddish community, the chinuch of their children, no one even knows what anyone else is going through. Many people experience challenges. I'm sure many viewers here are sacrificing many things for the sake of the Yiddishkeit of others. Also what? So one more Yid is going to put on tefillin, so that another Jewish woman maybe will participate in Shabbos Seudas, maybe she will light Shabbos candles. Hopefully some Yidden will eat matzah on Pesach, all because your Yiddishkeit is my Yiddishkeit. Because the Rebbe teaches us that your mitzvah is my mitzvah. Doesn't matter who did it. The geula that you're trying to bring is the same geula that I'm trying to bring. We're all doing this together. So practically in halacha, we have a mitzvah to ensure that on a basic level, at the very least, what we're not doing is keeping mitzvahs, doing the right thing more challenging, chas v'shalom, for another yid, which is the concept of michsho. The pasuk says, "Lifnei iver lo sitin michsho," you should not place an obstacle before a blind person. Don't chas v'shalom, like that little image we had over there. Don't create a situation, chas v'shalom, where another yid can stumble, can fall because they're blind. And the chinuch explains that this mitzvah includes causing or enabling, unfortunately, another yid to in any way stumble in their avodas Hashem, making it more likely through what we've done that they are going to, chas v'shalom, have difficulty in their mitzvahs. Okay, so with that introduction about lifnei iver, about responsibility, about caring about the Yiddishkeit of others and how we're interconnected, how does that impact the issue of tznius, the concept of tznius specifically? So firstly, on a very basic level, just to state the obvious, men are obviously affected by how careful women around them are or are not with their own tznius. And it's simply the kind of mitzvah that by definition has a direct impact on others. Again, they're not the reason, but they are affected by it, just like mitzvahs ben adam lachaveiroi, it is going to affect them. And therefore, in the context of lifnei iver l'sitin michshol, it's important as Yidden that we are mindful, extra mindful, that yes, it may be a challenge for us. It may be a very great challenge. And no one's judging, or no one should be judging. It's true that everyone has challenges in different areas. And yet when we recognize that something I can be struggling with is hurting others as well, there is going to be a sense of urgency perhaps to try to be a little bit more careful in that particular area. Like, let's say, for example, a wife feeling moody, right? And it's her personal situation. She's struggling. It's her own mitzvah. It's her own matter that Hashem wants her to be besimcha and productive and have bitachon and whatever. But a wife, a mother, is going to recognize that her moodiness has obviously a direct impact on her husband, and if there are children, on the children, and her mood just affects the entire household. And so it's not so simple to say, well, it's no one's business that I'm in a bad mood. Maybe it's not, right? It's between her and Hashem, but people are being affected by it, right? So generally, a spouse, a healthy, respectful spouse will recognize, the respectful, healthy parent will recognize this, that realizing that something could be difficult for me, but those around me are being impacted by it, gives us a little bit of a sense of urgency to be a little bit more careful, even when it's really hard. But beyond that, I would like to share with you a broader perspective that personally for me on this topic, I find very meaningful and inspiring, and I hope that you appreciate it as well. In Parshas Lech Lecha, Hashem makes a pact an eternal, everlasting pact, a bond, a bris with Avraham Avinu. Oops. Okay. Hashem says to Avram, I am attaching my holy name to yours. Avram, you will no longer be Avram, you will be Avraham, you have the Hey of Hashem. And Hashem promises him, you will have a son. And from this son, you will establish Avamayim Goyim, a complete nation. You will build a huge Am Yisrael, a great nation from this son. And they will be Hashem's special nation. And I will be your Eibishter. And not only that, I'm not only promising you a nation, I'm promising you a land, says Hashem. You will have Eretz Yisrael. There will be a land that will belong to you specifically that is part of this bris, part of the bond. This is what Hashem promises Avraham Avinu. And he asks Avram, gives him one mitzvah, one command, do one special mitzvah for me, and this will seal our bris, this will seal the pact between Hashem and Yidden. For you, for your sons, for all your future generations of Klal Yisrael. And it will be an eternal mark, a sign of this bris, of this pact that we're making, that we are one, that we're connected. A sign of the unbreakable bond between Hashem and Yidden. And this bond is the bris milah. On a basic level, of course, this mitzvah is performed once for every Yiddish boy at 8 days old. And yet, the Zohar explains something fascinating, and this is brought in many other Sfarim as well, that the concept of the bris is not only technically the mitzvah of the 8 days old having a bris, but it represents something much greater. It represents the responsibility of every Yiddish man to protect and preserve the kedusha that is contained within marriage. And this is called, in Sfarim, Shmiras Habris, protecting the kedusha, protecting the integrity of the bris. We know that the one opportunity given to Yidden to experience the koyach of Ein Sof in this world is within the holy space of Kiddushin, Ish v'Isha Zachu Shechina Beinehem. And by transcending their differences as separate individuals to become truly one, that's how they invite the Shechina. And that koyach of bringing the Shechina between them allows them to partner with the koyach of Ein Sof in creating, Yesh Me'ayin, creating a child. And therefore, where there is the greatest potential for Kedusha in this world, there will inevitably be the greatest opportunity for the opposite, for the Zeh Umas Zeh. Because the koyach, this koyach of attraction between men and women, from a man and a woman, which is intended, of course, to serve the holiest purpose in the world, as we just discussed, can easily be misdirected. It can be diluted. It can be undermined, chas v'shalom. And this is the bris that Hashem established with Avraham Avinu forever. Zois brisi asher tishmuru. Protect the kedusha of marriage. Both in halacha and in Kabbalah. I brought some sources here. It's clear that Shmiras Habris is fundamental both to the personal avodas Hashem of a man, as well as to all of Bnei Yisrael. It is the gateway allowing a Yid personally to connect with Hashem. All of his Torah and Tefillah is affected by it and empowered by it. The Zohar says here, as long as Yidden uphold Kiyama Kadisha, this holy bris, they sustain the world, the Shemayim and Aretz. The world is sustained by it. The heavens and earth depend on this bris for their existence. In other words, the ultimate expression of the mission of a Yid in this world, in making a dira b'tachtoinim, bringing Hashem into the most seemingly mundane areas of life, is preserving the kedusha that is vested in this most important area of life, marriage, the area that turns that the world, unfortunately, turns into the exact opposite. Now, let's think about this. Women don't have brists, right? We know that. And in fact, women don't need a bris because we are taught that it is natural, and it's pretty obvious, it is natural for women to appreciate the powerful kedusha of marriage and to see the relationship between a man and a woman for what it's supposed to be, to see it as one of connection and not, chas v'shalom, just a technicality or a physical thing that is meant to be abused for personal gratification. That's like a woman knows that's not appropriate. It's just natural to her. But in truth, this eternal mission, this bris of Klal Yisrael to uphold Kedusha is a responsibility that we all share, men and women. It's just that men and women have different roles in making that happen. So what we both share practically in Torah and mitzvahs is an obligation in this area to preserve Kedusha by many of the same things, avoiding any of the arayas. And it's fascinating that in Yom Kippur, we read in the Torah about the arayas, like the holiest day of the year, and what we're learning about all the inappropriate relationships. Because this is what Kedusha boils down to, is ensuring that we preserve the holiest part of life and not let it get chas v'shalom diluted. So we're all commanded to avoid inappropriate relationships and anything that can lead to them, which are called kreva la'arayas. Those include yichud, which I know there was a series about. So that's common to men and to women, all of those very critical mitzvahs to ensure this kedusha. Now, in addition, there are specific responsibilities of men and of women in this regard. So the responsibilities of men, briefly, in this context, include the following very fundamental mitzvahs. Okay. No. There we go. First of all, in order of severity, the most serious being avoiding zera levatala, which is considered in halacha and in Tanya, chomer mikol averos shebetorah, most severe. 2, avoiding hirhurei avera, meaning any unsneistic thoughts, which can potentially, of course, lead to number 1, zera levatala. This mitzvah is learned from the pasuk, v'lo yisosuru acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem. Don't turn astray following your eyes. And the Gemara explains following the eyes, acharei einechem, means hirhurei avera, meaning don't have inappropriate thoughts that come from what one sees. Also, it is brought from the pasuk v'nishmarta mikol davar ra, to be careful from any davar, something that is not good. The Gemara explains that this also refers to shlei har adam, that a person should not have hirhurim, inappropriate, not sneistic thoughts. And these, the Gemara says, hurei avera kashem me avera, that even if nothing else happens, the unsneistic thoughts that a man could have are considered kashem me avera, in a certain sense, more severe, more serious. Not sure how we undo that. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so those are considered serious in halacha as well. I'm sorry, I don't know how to get that off the screen. I apologize. Number 3, not only does a man have to avoid hirhurim, inappropriate thoughts, but a man is also obligated to avoid, on a more basic level, that which could lead to it, to avoid even consciously looking. Just looking at a woman, gazing at a woman, based on those same psukim, l'sur achrei einechem, following the eyes, v'nishmarta mikol davar ra, shlo yistakel adam b'isha na'ah, that a man should not look at a beautiful woman, or even if she's not to look at a woman consciously at all. Now, the point, of course, is that achrei einechem is that halachically, the reason is because by looking, that could lead to hirhurei avera because of how Hashem just naturally created men. But it's important to understand that lo yisosuru, that not looking, that shlo yistakel adam, is independent, and a man is not allowed to even look, even if nothing results from it. So just the fact that they are maybe drawn to look is already problematic. Okay, so that helps us get a little bit of an understanding of the mitzvahs of men in this context. Now, all these mitzvahs essentially mean that, what are they saying? The concept of zera levatala hira beira, looking at a woman, are basically saying that the power of attraction that Hashem created for the purpose of helping a man bond in an appropriate and kedushitic way with his wife and bring the Shekhinah down to this world, that koyach of attraction has to be guarded so that it remains only where it's meant to be and not in any way misdirected to places and people that it does not belong, and dilute and undermine the koyach that it has within his marriage. So this is what the men are responsible for. That's their role in this picture. And I want to suggest here that perhaps we take a moment to really think about this. As women, think about what it could be like to be a man and have this avodah. Hashem created them with a certain nature, naturally, and then made a bris. And in that bris, Hashem commands them to do everything in their power at all times throughout their lives, even when it's extremely difficult, which it often is, to avoid acting on that very nature Hashem gave them. Which means that a man with Yiras Shamayim, trying to have Yiras Shamayim, is spending his life struggling with this all the time. And he may fail, and he keeps trying, and he keeps struggling. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. And at times, they may feel that it's impossible. And yet this is what Hashem asks of the children of Avraham Avinu. And with every opportunity and every challenge to Kedusha, a man has the incredible opportunity to affirm this bris kadosh and reveal the Kedusha that Hashem invested in Klal Yisrael. I would like to share a fascinating story. The Divrei Chaim, who's known as the Tzanzer Rebbe of Chaim Halberstam, was a great Talmud Chacham. And there are many Hasidic dynasties that came from him. And as a young man, he was very famous as a great Talmud Chacham, and many families wanted him for their daughter, Shidduch. And there was a problem, however, that he had a physical mum, he had a flaw, and that was that one leg was shorter than the other. So unfortunately, he had this limp when he walked that didn't look very nice. And so despite all his wonderful qualities, often he would have difficulty actually when it came to a shidduch, that it just wasn't going. And one day his parents notified him that there was a fine young woman from a nice family that they wanted for a shidduch. And unfortunately, it again did not work out because the parents heard about this limp that he had. And the tzanzer was very interested in this particular shidduch. So he asked the young lady's father if he could actually speak to the young woman himself and discuss it with her, even though the parents were not so happy about it. So the meeting was arranged, and he began, and he told this young woman that what the Chazal say, that 40 days before a child is conceived, there comes there's a message from Shemayim that says, so-and-so will marry so-and-so, right? And plenty, right? That the daughter of so-and-so for the son of so-and-so, right? And this is the shidduch. So he tells her, before I was born, my neshama asked to see my future wife, my zivuk. And they showed me your neshama, and I was so excited because you were so perfect. And however, I realized there was one problem. She says, really? What was that? So he tells her, I noticed that you had a limp. You had a very noticeable limp. One leg was shorter than the other. And I was so pained by this because otherwise you were like the picture of perfection. Your neshama just looked so perfect. I was so excited, but it was so painful to see that you had, unfortunately, this moment. And I thought, you know, women care so much about their appearance. It's so important to them. Women care to look beautiful. And it really troubled me. I was really bothered and pained for you that you're going to have to live for a lifetime with something that undermines your beauty, and that, you know, that's going to be hard for you. And so I asked Hashem, please give this mum to me. Please give this imperfection to me instead of to my future Kala. And Hashem listened. And Mishamayim, they decided that it was going to be that way. And they saw how concerned I was for you and how much I cared for you. And as you see, they've given me the limp instead of to you. And so today I have a limp and you do not. And I took it upon myself so that you would not suffer. When the young woman heard these words from the Devrei Chaim, she became very, very still, very quiet. And after a short while, she stood up. She left the room. She came back a while later. She approached her father and said, I've changed my mind. I would like to marry this individual, this Talmud Chacham. She recognized the emes in what he was saying. And of course, he wasn't just saying it. She recognized that this was the truth. Shortly afterward, they got married. And this is the beginning of the Tzanzer dynasty and all the other citizens that came from there. I think it's a beautiful story, B'chalal, about recognizing how a husband and wife are one in their avodas Hashem, in their lives. Men and women collectively in Yiddishkeit, all Yidden, are one and connected. But specifically, I want to point out that perhaps it would be helpful for us to see the half of Am Yisrael, the men and boys who have this incredibly challenging avodah, as having, you might say, a limp that could have been ours. A man and his wife are one neshama, and all Yidden are one whole. We have different mitzvahs, different nisyonos, different roles, and we carry them for each other. So, having discussed what the men's role is in Shmiras Habris, in upholding the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael, which they do for us as well, what is the women's role? What is our part in this bris? Women, of course, obviously have an essential role in upholding Kedusha as well, which this Kedusha that we're talking about, the Kedusha of a Yiddish marriage. Second, okay. The Rebbe quotes the Friedrich Rebbe in a letter. It's a quote that I love very much. Als was is heilig und teuer, dem göttlichen jiddischen Volk. Everything that is holy and dear to the godly Yiddish nation. The Gründung, the management of the Yiddish home, the upbringing of the children, the kashrus und die kedusha von der Heim, the kedusha of the home and kedusha of Shabbos, all these critically important elements, Hashem, the Eibusher gegeben und vertraut, Hashem has entrusted the Yiddish women to uphold in Yiddish life. And a woman who takes this responsibility seriously, these 5 critical fundamental areas of Yiddishkeit, and upholds them, about her, the Torah says, Chachmas Nashim Bansa Besa, that the wisdom of a woman has built her home. That this is the ultimate praise for a woman, that she is able to uphold these responsibilities. So of course, I want to focus specifically on this number 4, the Kedusha from der Heim, that Hashem entrusted upholding the Kedusha of der Heim, including that which we just discussed, including the Kedusha that the men are working on. Ultimately, the responsibility to ensure that that happens has been given to the women. And this is expressed in 2 areas, this Kedusha that women are responsible for. Number 1, Taras Mishpacha. Number 2, Sneas. They are both deeply connected in ensuring that the Kedusha, the sanctity of the relationship between a husband and wife, is protected, directed, where and when it should be. So Taras Mishpacha is obvious, and that's not the focus of our series, so I'm not going to spend time on that. Let's get back to Sneas, number 2. Which are, of course, these 2 are brought together constantly. The mitzvah of Sneas, in this context, ensures that that which is supposed to remain private and kadosh, because that's the same thing, both physically and emotionally, right? That which should not be seen, that which should not be known, is not shared with others. Because if anyone can see it and everyone knows about it, then it's not Kaddish. Kaddish means holy, because Kaddish means separate. The fact that it's Kiddushin, the fact that it's only for this one holy marriage, is what makes it Kaddish. So ensuring that that which belongs there should not be seen and known by anybody else. And the Gemara tells us, Ein ha'isha ela liyofi. Hashem created a woman for beauty. Hashem created us to be beautiful. And our beauty as Yiddish women is supposed to be seen. It's supposed to be appreciated. It's supposed to be wanted in the right place by the right person. As women, I think we may not realize at times the deep impact of our dress and behavior on men, because we're not men, right? We just don't realize what's happening. And it's important that we recognize that we don't really understand. Like, just like there are some things men are never going to get about women, no matter how badly their wives wish they would. They're just not going to understand, right? Why do you think this way? Why do you feel this way? And why are you so sensitive? They're not women. And they might offer advice and solutions when their wife just wants some sympathy and emotional support. And we'll try, but they will never really experience what a woman is experiencing. So too, a woman will never understand the nature Hashem gave men and what it means to be a man and how it feels. So we need to trust that when Torah tells us that there are certain aspects of dress or behavior that can make it more difficult, too difficult perhaps, for a man to uphold the Kedushas HaBris, which he's anyway working so hard to do. But it makes it much harder than it already is, to the point of possibly taking away a certain element of bechira in the matter. That if Torah says so, then that's the way it is, even if we don't know it because we're not men. And therefore, taking that extra care, that our standards of tznius, that those standards we're keeping between us and Hashem anyway. That's the reason we're doing them. But being careful, realizing that tznius is also supporting the avodah that the men are working so hard at and fighting so hard for throughout their lives. It's supporting that. And it's part of our partnership. The men are doing their part, the women are doing their part to ensure in this vital issue that goes to the core of Kedushas Am Yisrael, that it is upheld. And this responsibility that we carry as women, there's no question that it's not easy. The avodah of men is not easy for them, and the avodah of women is not easy for us either, right? And Isha Elaliyafi, Hashem created women to be beautiful, just like Taras Mishpacha can be challenging. It's a beautiful mitzvah. It's an incredible mitzvah. It comes with challenges, and tznius can also feel like a real sacrifice at times, and we can acknowledge that. It doesn't have to be easy. It's right, it's emes, it's important, and sometimes it's just not easy. And the Medrash teaches us, you see here, Bereshis Rabbah, that when Hashem created the woman, Hashem created Chava from Adam, he created her from a part of the body that is tsunua b'Adam, that is tzniistic, that is always covered, that remains always covered. And as Hashem created her, I'll call Aver ve'Aver, with every part that Hashem created, the woman, he told her, Tehei shetznua b'tzniistic. Because maybe it wouldn't be as easy for her. And she, her affinity for beauty that Hashem gave her might make it challenging at times. And Hashem reminded her, yes, it is your nature. And just like men are overcoming their nature, work hard, to be tzniistic in all areas, at all times, at the same time as you are looking beautiful. And so, at times, the details of tznius might require us to forego a certain item of clothing that we really want and it's beautiful and we found in the store and it's on sale and it fits just right and it's just a little too short and there's nothing we could do about it, or it's going to ruin the dress if we change it or whatever. And it's hard, and it's Mesiras Nefesh at times, right? Or there's a look we feel is attractive and we think it will look good on us and it might make us look more flattering, and we just know that it's not appropriate and it doesn't measure up, and we give up on that. There are times we might want to naturally just express our charming nature, just feel free to be who we are with our beautiful personality and not have to feel restrained and contain ourselves and just be ourselves. And sometimes we need to curb that because it's not the appropriate setting, and that's difficult. And often women feel like the whole responsibility has been given to us, like it's all our problem. Our nature has to be restrained and we have to have it difficult. Why should my life have to be restricted so that men can have it easy? And, in light of everything we've discussed thus far, I think that in addition to understanding how Torah sees responsibility, it is also kind of far from the truth, because honestly, it's probably to be objective, it's probably the men whose challenges and obligations in upholding Kedusha on a constant basis are truly that much greater. And as women, we would probably not want to be in their place. We would probably not choose that challenge and that avodah. And so perhaps we can recognize that our effort to uphold Kedushas Am Yisrael through our tznius, joined together with the efforts of our husbands, our sons, all the other Yiddish men in Klal Yisrael, what they're doing at Shmiras Habris, and we combine. They're doing their avodah, we do ours. Together, we help reveal the Shekhinah in this world. Okay, so having said all of this, it is also critical that we recognize something very important, another factor in this as well. And that is, when we choose a life of serving Hashem, and the starting point is always, it's about Hashem, it's not about me. But when we do that, when Hashem becomes the center, choosing a life of serving Hashem is ubacharta b'chaim. It's choosing life itself. Because ultimately, although our tznius is for Hashem, and we are mindful of its impact on Klal Yisrael, on our own husbands, sons, all the other men, etc. It is also true that we as women gain immeasurably from this lifestyle of Kedusha. We benefit. The Rebbe explains here in this Sikha that a lack of tznius, just naturally, the way Hashem created life and people, is going to provoke the less refined instincts of a man. And doing that can't possibly result in a man seeing this woman, thinking of her or treating her with the kind of respect that she deserves. Right? It's not going to help him improve his derech eretz, even to his own vibe. It's just not going to bring out his most respectful way of thinking about her and relating to her. Again, not that takes away any of his bechira chafshis, chas v'sholem. We're just talking about what he's even going to think and what kind of nature it brings out. And so his true self that would really want to give that respect, would want to see her in a respectful way, would want to see her as the person that Hashem created her. It makes it that much more difficult for that to happen. To be a little bit blunt, I quote the following from a Hasidic married man. Honestly, if women had a clue how a man looks at a girl with a miniskirt, they would feel violated. Okay. There is nothing that shows such deep respect for women as the halachas of tznius. We keep it for Hashem. Hashem is thinking about us. And Hashem is ensuring that men will be able to and will treat women with the utmost respect. We'll think of them, not just treat, but we'll think of them in a respectful way. We'll never think of them in the opposite of Shmiras Habris, chas v'shalom, taking away that kedusha and having those inappropriate thoughts about her, and that she will retain her dignity. We will retain our dignity. Hashem created men and he created women, and he gave each of us the exact nature we need to fulfill our roles. And when we follow, therefore, the framework of Torah, the lifestyle of Kedusha that is given to Am Kadosh, men doing their part, women doing ours, not only do we create a home for Hashem in this world, but ubacharta b'chaim, our homes, our own marriages, our own lives are benched with connection, dignity, and respect. So that is category number 5. Now, I know we're running out of time. I want to mention briefly another few points. Everything we've discussed about tznius, there's so much to it. There is a lot to work on. It really touches a deep place in us. There are many aspects, and we all have our challenges, and we're working on it. I would like to suggest that in the spirit of, even though that's not the topic here, but in the spirit of responsibility and shared responsibility, we can help each other. As women, not only do we care about beauty, we care very much about connection and relationships. That's natural to us. We're not living on our own planet. We care about what each other think. Maybe we should try to care less, but we do. And we can help each other, support each other in this avoid of tznius in all aspects in many ways. And I want to just put out some suggestions. Number one, here in the middle, a positive attitude, support. Perhaps we can really try to think about the words we use about tznius. Are we talking about tznius, being tzniistic, tznius guidelines, halachas of tznius, school rules, whatever the case might be? Are we talking about them in a positive way and helping people frame them the way they should be? Or are we using words that are less than positive about tznius and, you know, building on that negative association many of us already unfortunately have? Are we encouraging each other? We see a friend, a family member who has upgraded a certain level of tznius and avoiding chas v'shalom making fun, but rather the positive, giving some encouragement, share with her how beautiful she looks as a tzniistic person. She's probably so uncomfortable and worried about how she looks. Being encouraging and positive and using nice words about tznius, about the efforts we're all making with each other about tznius. Don't underestimate how much, you know, the way we speak and the way we look about it, the encouragement we give each other can affect all of us. Social media, right? The posts we make about social media, the kind of picture about tznius, right? The way we talk, not just in person, but the kind of messages that we put out there. You know, are we sharing cynical things? Because, you know, and it's natural, sort of like if I'm uncomfortable, then it's easier to make fun of something. You know, are we thinking about are the things I'm sharing, are the pictures that I'm sharing, are they helping promote an image in people's minds of what is appropriate? Are the things that I'm sharing, not just pictures, but content, are they supporting an environment of tznius? You know, it's one big global village. We're all in this together. And what we see and what we talk about together really gives us all a certain sense of what's normal, right? What are we normalizing on social media? And finally, advertisements, store advertisements. You know, there are so many people, and we are grateful to everyone who is invested in helping ensure there is beautiful tzniistic clothing available for Yiddish women and girls. So we thank them, and anyone who has influence in that department. You know, I want to just suggest that one key area in which we can support each other in tznius beyond making tzniistic clothing technically available is the kind of advertisements we put on out there. We're so affected. You know, maybe we're not men, and the mitzvah shmir seinaim it's not that same mitzvah, but what we see is going to affect how we feel, and a certain image of what a girl's supposed to look like, what her hairstyle should look like, what kind of facial expression she's making, is she wearing stockings with that tzniistic clothing, etc. You know, all those images go into our mind and give us a certain sense of what is normal, how is a Yiddish girl or woman supposed to look. And, you know, I think we can all think about how are we contributing in a positive way to an environment where we all see tznius in a beautiful way, in a correct way, and make it easier for all of us to do the right thing. And I want to conclude finally with maybe the most important part, which is the brachas, the rewards that we are promised for tznius. And after this, we will open for questions in Ritz Hashem. Shmira, protection. There are many, many sources. The pasuk, this actually, it says in Torah itself, the pasuk tells us, Yashem alekecha misalach b'kerev machanecha, lahatzilcha mikol oivecha lefnecha, to save us from our enemies. Hashem is there protecting us, especially in Eretz Yisrael, but everywhere to protect us from those who wish us harm, and there are no shortage of them. And Hashem asks of us something that we can do to merit, to be zoiche to extra shmira from Hashem, for ourselves, for our families, and for all of Klal Yisrael. Lahatzilcha is b'haya machanecha kodesh v'layira b'cha'er b'star. Our tznius, the Rebbe talks about this, our tznius helps bring about shmira, protection for Klal Yisrael, and specifically for our families. The Rebbe quotes from the Zohar many times, Gefen gesund parnasa nachas, that this threesome that we all daven for, and may every single Yiddish woman and man be benched with these begoloi, tevanir benigla gesund parnasa and nachas. The Rebbe tells us that it is spoken about in Gemara and Zohar many, many times, that the tznius of a frau, the tznius of a Yiddish woman, is the most guaranteed way to ensure gesund parnasa nasach nachas emes nachas von kinder. The Medrash Nechuma says that isha tznua zoicha to banim, that could be kahanim gudam to banim, to children that she can have nachas from. Again, the best nachas from kinder, the highest, the greatest nachas from children, begashmias and beruchnias, successful children, emotionally healthy children, happy children, and beruchnias, yiras shamayim, etc. All of this is influenced, perhaps more than anything else, by the tznius of the mother. And finally, and most importantly, that which we are all waiting for. But one second, actually, before I get to that, I want to share a story. Mrs. Zelda Nemes, Aleh Shalom, shared the following story. She said, I was born in Russia. I moved to Eretz Yisrael. That's where I got married. And then she said, I traveled to America. And at that point, she shares that she was covering her hair, covering her head with a half sheitel, like a fall, and a hat on top of that. And she had a yichidus with the Rebbe. She came in, and the Rebbe asked her husband to leave the room. And then the Rebbe told her, personally, without her husband there, directly, the Rebbe told her that a Yiddish woman should wear a full sheitel. So she said, but Rebbe, my hair is covered completely. It's all covered. I have a half sheitel in the back, right? It's all tzniistic. So the Rebbe told her, half sheitel is half gesund, half health. Who would want half health? So she was really shaken, and the Rebbe smiled broadly, and the positive said that if one wears a sheitel, one is promised gesund, parnasa, nachas von de kinder, de eneklach nachas from the children and grandchildren. And the Rebbe smiled and says, what else would you like? So she said, Rebbe, that's enough, thank you. And the Rebbe called in her husband and said, buy her the beautiful sheitel, that she should want to wear it, that others should see her, and they should want to wear a sheitel as well. So we all have complete gesund, complete parnasa, complete nachas from our efforts in tznius. And finally, geula b'schar noshim tzedkanias shayu b'oisei adar nigalo v'seinim b'mitzrayim, as we heard before, shlashinu shmam malbusham u'lashainam. That and this is brought in many places. The Rebbe speaks about this a lot, perhaps more than anything else, including all the above, right? It's not about the specifics, the complete picture of what we're waiting for, the geula shlema. Women, b'schar noshim tzedkanias, we are told that sidin li goel, this geula we are waiting for any moment, we're going to be the ones to bring it. And our efforts in tznius, it's not, we're just making it up and it's a nice thing. Clearly, the fact that the women were tzniistic in Mitzrayim, shlishinu small busham, that is, right, and they're and shmam and lishainam, right? So because of that, they were zaychli Mitzrayim, the same thing here. Our tznius, our efforts, every single one of us, and those we will share this with, to take another step in improving on our tznius and bring us closer to Hashem and bringing out the Yid inside of us and helping uphold Kedushas Am Yisrael, will not only invite the Shmira here and all the other brachas that we need for our families, our husbands and children, but will finally bring about, and we can do this, every single one of us, that little action, finally break the walls of Golos and bring about the Geula Shlema. May it be Takef Miyad Mamish. On that note, we're going to open for questions. I want to thank everyone who's listening and pass it on to Chassie.
Hi, if you could just close your screen up so that we could.
Thank you. Yep, there we go.
Okay. Thank you, Chanie, for those clear explanations on how this is so much more than what meets the eye at first glance. Definitely much more than we learned before. Now we'll open for questions. So question number one, are these 5 things deraisa? I understand they're all important and should be done, but factually, how much of this is actually Isra deraisa?
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Yes, these are actually all 5 elements deraisa, but as we went through each one of them, there are various elements within them that are derabanan. And again, for whoever missed that, we discussed that even derabanan is technically deraisa anyway, because there's a mitzvah deraisa to listen to the chachamim. So it's kind of a major question, Yiddish kind of, about what you would consider deraisa, but for strict purposes, yes, all of these core issues, Hatznei Aleches is deraisa, what do we have? Das Moshe is deraisa, the Das Yehudis is derabanan, and again, what the implication of that is. Chukas Hagoy is deraisa, Gever is deraisa, that's why we brought the psukim. These are all based in Torah itself.
Thank you. With regard to pants, what about the argument that pants aren't Klei Gever anymore because it's accepted for women to wear pants in the rest of the world? Assuming not the tight pants, which will then go in another category. So we can address that, please.
Right. So this is actually discussed extensively by Paiskim, who debate this issue like for quite a while already, in recent generations. And the conclusion is that pants are inherently a clay gever. They're the kind of thing that is just as it's brought, and I think we've mentioned this previously, that when it comes to the halachas of tumah, mentioning a man sits on a saddle and the saddle that he sat on becomes tamei, it does not bring the merkav that a woman sits on, because a woman doesn't do that, because the halacha brings it is not appropriate for women to separate their legs. That inherently a garment that causes to see the separation of the legs is considered inherently inappropriate for women, and therefore is branded clay gever no matter what the world does with it.
Okay, thank you. What about pants under a nightgown? For two levels. Number one, is it more appropriate, like is it more serious for a married woman to wear pants under her nightgown? And should we encourage our teenage girls to wear pants under a nightgown? On one hand, maybe it'll be more serious if the nightgown rides up. On the other hand, are we encouraging them to then wear pants without the nightgown?
That's an interesting question. I want to say, first of all, again, halachically, the Lubavitcher Rabbanim do allow pajama pants for practical purposes of cold and comfort and staying covered if they are under a tzniustic nightgown, just to be clear about that. Whether ideally one should wear them, I think is a personal question that depends a lot on if a woman stays covered or not. You know, if she can get her blanket tucked in and wears a long nightgown and can keep herself properly covered. My personal feeling, others might disagree, is that the whole clay gever thing, you know, clothing rubs off on us. We get used to a certain style. We wear it just in this context. It becomes natural for us to wear it. You know, I wear it just at home. It becomes just outside. You know, a lot of things just become natural like that. So my personal feeling for myself, my own children, would be trying to learn to sleep in a tzniustic way with a long tzniustic nightgown and get used to keeping the bed covers tucked in such a way that doesn't require wearing pants, so that it doesn't become natural and part of life. Does that mean it's wrong? I don't think it's wrong. It's just, you know, a sensitivity of, is this what I want to be lechatchila? Obviously, if practically someone's becoming uncovered, they should make sure that they are staying covered at night in a tzniustic way. I do want to say one more thing, and that is about women, married women specifically, and styles of, I don't know if this belongs on the Zoom here, but perhaps especially married women, it's a good opportunity to think about dignity and a refined look. And am I go to sleep wearing schleppy, you know, put together pants and this and t-shirts and something stuck on top? Or do I look like a queen, you know, like a Yiddish woman, a bas melech should, with refined, beautiful, elegant nightwear that, you know, just might be a perspective to think about.
Okay, thank you. What's the best way to tell a friend who comes to visit in a not tznius way to come over in a tznius way?
Meaning dress not tzniustic?
Yes, that's what the question is. Your friend comes to your house in a not tznius way. How can you present this, I guess, in a life namaskabo? How can you present this to your friend to come over in a more tznius way to your home?
Wow, that is a heavy question. But first of all, I think we need to realize that that's not different than lots of other things where we need a general approach to what do we require in terms of other people's Yiddishkeit. If we're on shluchos, right, do we tell people what they need to do, or do we just radiate light? And that's, I think, a very sensitive question at all times. Sometimes we're in a position of chinuch, right, where if you're running a school and everyone's coming here for chinuch, the actions of one influence the other. And as much as we would like to be accommodating and say everyone grow at your own pace, one student comes dressed not tzniustic, everyone else is affected by it, and therefore you need to require certain behaviors and standards of people, even if they're not fully there. However, on a one-to-one basis, generally, the most ideal approach, and everyone should speak to their own Rav Mashpia, is to try to allow people to grow at their own pace and radiate light, as opposed to making demands of them. And you're kind of only welcome if you follow the rules. Again, if I'm hiring someone as a babysitter for my children, you know, that's different if I could say, listen, I would like you to be a dugma, I expect certain things. But in terms of just a friend that I'm meeting, I think we often need to think about, is there a necessary reason I need to establish boundaries? And there might be. And again, talk to Rav Mashpia if there's a reason I need to, or if I should rather try to just be makarev through positivity.
Thank you. Another question about the Machon Chana story about the mirrors. The person asks for accuracy. They're wondering, they heard the story in a different way, also asking about radios. I don't know if you know the story or know the context.
Interesting. That's the way I saw the story. Someone wants to correct it, I'm happy to hear. I did not hear anything about radios. The basic gist of the story is definitely that the Rebbe looked for the mirrors, was concerned they might not be there, and said it's very important for girls to have mirrors. I don't know if there are other versions. Sorry.
Yeah, that concludes all of our questions. Thank you very much for everybody who tuned in tonight. I'd like to just point out that next week we'll be having a retrospective on the history of Mitzvah Taras Mishpacha, beginning in Tafshin Lamed Hey, 1975, the Rebbe's call to action in this mitzvah. It's a short 30-minute presentation. It will be at mikvah.org/live next week at 8:30. Thank you, Chanie, so much for this incredible resource of really truly understanding the mitzvah of tznius and how it impacts all of us. May we be zeicha that all of us are able to increase in this mitzvah and bring to the geula now. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And, oh, wait, 1 second. Did I get one more question? No, that's it. Thank you and good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.